Taxpayer Alert. I'm Al Segalla. I'm president of the Calaveras County Taxpayers Association, and we have an exciting program for you at this time. We have Amanda Folendorf, who's the chairman of our Board of Supervisors, a vivacious lady with a lot to say. Welcome, Amanda.
Hi, welcome.
All right,
Thank you for having me tonight, or today.
Well, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I've been on the Board of Supervisors for 2 years now. I was elected in 2020, and prior to that, I was on the City Council, the Angels Camp City Council, where I served a few years as the city mayor as well. So it was a nice transition going over from city to county, and everyone has been wonderful the last couple years and bringing me along into the county business.
That's pretty good. Now, also, you get together with the city on some things, don't you?
Yes, we do. There's a lot of the county provides a lot of services like behavioral health services, animal services, and then obviously the city has its own jurisdictional with their own public works, their own water system, but there is overlaps in collaboration on those items that would be facilitated by the county versus the city providing those two constituents.
I understand there was some talk about law enforcement, maybe having the sheriff handle the city as well as the county. Is there any more talk about that? Or?
That's always been a discussion over the years, but I think that the residents of the city pay the services that they want, and one of those services are police. They want their police, and especially their fire, within the city limits is to have that response within the city's sphere of influence. But the city has collaborated with the sheriff department over the years, even probably now as well, with multiple things. When I was on the city council, we had to contract out, obviously, because the lack of individuals on the police force. But they have now staffed it, and it's just the collaboration of the agencies for public safety overall, which is good.
Yeah. Maybe there's not really a great economic advantage.
Correct.
Having one dispatch rather than two.
Well, the dispatch is contracted to the sheriff, so those are some of the collaborations with the city and the county.
Okay.
So the city does contract with the sheriff's office for dispatch.
Okay.
So there are some overlaps where we do try to or utilize the same services, so there aren't duplicates like that.
Okay, well, our next item would be budget. We have we owe money, apparently $9 million.
Yes.
But we got some of that paid off?
Yes.
Well, what's happening with that?
Well, that's, the last couple months, staff has really been working hard to figure out how to bring the structural deficit of $9 million down. And in December, the board approved solving about $4.9 million of it. We still have approximately $4.3 million to go. But in the first phase of, we call it phase 1 and phase 2, during the first phase, the board of supervisors was able to utilize cost savings within other budgetary line items and remove a lot of the one-time funding and find those revenues to replace that 4.9. So it's looking positive. It's a good thing overall, because what it will stand the county up for in the future is the ability to be more proactive, be on our toes rather than on our heels, and constantly reacting rather than being proactive. So a lot of things maybe not only county staff needs, but also what the community expects and services that the county may provide, will be able to really be more strategic in how we can continue funding those items or add additional service if that
How long do you think it would take for the rest of it to be paid off?
I think the goal would be before the next fiscal year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that'd be awesome.
So we have another meeting coming up in the next couple months. I don't quite know what agenda date it's going to be, but it'll definitely be before mid-year to take the additional step of phase 2 and see what we can accomplish for that. Where the board is able to take action will only better set up for us for our fiscal year coming up in July. So we're hoping to have good news by July 1 for the next fiscal year and apply some of that.
All right.
So how far we get in that 4.3 million, we'll see. But something will be positively changed on that.
That's good. Well, you also have capital projects that you're doing, is that right?
Yes, correct.
And that's got to fit in somewhere.
Yes, it does. So when we talk about capital projects, a lot of people think about roads
Right.
and infrastructure. In the first chunk, the capital projects I'm going to be discussing are going to be more facility and investment back into county services. So for example, we have funded the animal shelter, DA's office, upgrading the county-wide electrical grid, modernizing current existing offices, for not only the employees, but also for the services of the constituents that come in to utilize those facilities. So there's approximately about $17 million in fund for that, and that is all based off of a one-time fund. And again, that's part of all of the re-budgeting, is ensuring that we're using one-time funds for one-time costs and utilizing revenue for ongoing, expenses.
Who pays the one-time funds?
One-time funds may come from grants.
Okay.
It may come from, for example, Health and Human Services got $22 million based off of a grant to build additional facilities. So those funds are going to, that's where those one-time. Obviously, ongoing and operation are going to be something to discuss in the future, but the county never would be in that position to be able to build these facilities
Right.
or upgrade facilities without some of these grant funding. So staff has worked very hard to apply to various grant options that are available to their specific services.
I understand there's government grants from federal government,
Correct,
and there's state grants,
correct,
and there's private grants.
yes.
How does that, where does most of this money come from? Or
That's where actually a lot of that money comes from. And then, just talked about buildings and improvements of government facilities, but, same thing is applied to roads. We do collect, fees through the gas tax and things like that. That does get allocated to our county based on certain matrices, but we heavily rely on the grant funding, whether that be through state road funds or federal infrastructure funds. So for example, in San Andreas, right here in town, the county's been awarded $10 million to improve Pope Street. That's all through grant funding. Highway 4 realignment project, that's all grant, of state and federal dollars.
and the state is actually doing that, right?
Yes, the county is the lead, but the county is the lead on the project, but in collaboration with Caltrans and the Council of Governments.
Okay.
But we heavily, small counties like ours, we rely on those grants in whatever capacity they are, because we don't have the tax base with our population size to generate those types of funds and monetary. Where you may see a larger county with a governing body, they are able to do some of these projects because they have the population size to generate the type of revenue that is needed for those projects. So rural counties like Calaveras really need to be proactive in applying for these grants, and putting a plan together to be set up to apply and show that we're ready. We have, I think the buzzword is self-ready project for
Shovel ready.
yeah, to get funded,
Yeah.
whether that be applying through Caltrans or, like I said earlier, Health and Human Services applying for a grant for updated building.
Is there a concern about regulations or requirements on the funding that would restrict the Board of Supervisors' autonomy?
Yes, there's always that. State legislation is always putting mandates that are unfunded.
Right.
And again, that's where sometimes we do have to utilize our funds to implement some of these unfunded mandates in hopes that then in the near future, state legislators realize that local government does need assistance in implementing the regulations that they have at the state level.
Yeah. I wonder,
And it's a balance, you know, we recognize as an elected body at the local level that there are a lot of issues, but sometimes our hands are tied because of the state legislations. Like we are then required to meet certain deadlines there, and it just
who's in charge?
exactly.
If you didn't have state and federal grants, the taxpayers wouldn't have to pay so much money to the state or the federal government. There'd be less taxes. Would the amount of tax savings, if you could get it, be enough to cover home funding or county funding of these projects? Not enough.
Because we don't have the population.
Okay.
So when you think about population and your tax rate, or any fees,
Right.
I mean, it's talk about your water fees, you know, it's not just tax, it's any type of revenue to support a service that you expect. There is a cost to providing that service, and so how do you do that? You know, you're trying to you're trying to not burden your taxpayers, your constituents, for those services by seeking these other revenues out. But if we did not have those, then we would be asking more from our constituents because we wouldn't be able to keep our fire and police employed. We wouldn't be able to have as many employees, you know, taking customer service calls for whatever it may,
Right.
you know, having the guys go out or gals, I said, of our public works, you know, making sure that the roads are plowed or, you know, potholes. So, you know, there's that level of service of expectation, and then there's the reality of how much are we actually bringing in as a county without burdening our own residents.
You'd have to probably have bond issues for funding. Well, it looked like you either have to put money aside for contingencies, or have bond issues where the people that are using the service would pay on their taxes for the bonds. Does that make sense?
Yes, correct, and that's what it would, you know, that would what it be, you know,
Then you'd have total control.
but.
Okay.
But it's still not that easy. You still have, I mean, look at what with those rates, you know, service cost goes up over the years, you know, you have a lot of fees that have not been changed in 30, 40 years, but the level of expectation is there, but the service cost has gone up, and,
Right.
you know, if you're not parallel that, you're gonna have a vast, and then how do you make up that gap to get to the level of service that anyone is expecting?
Yeah, that's assuming there's no inflation, but
Yes,
we've got
yes,
a lot of...
but then you
a lot
add
of
inflation and you add everything, and yes, then that's a whole nother.
Okay, so there's no instant solutions
No, there
in the
isn't.
horizon on that.
You gotta love government, don't you? They got you handcuffed one way or another.
Well, that's true. Well, now there's been changes happening with the CAO.
Yes.
What's the status on that?
So we have an interim CAO, now CEO title, Craig Pedro. He is from Tuolumne County. He served Tuolumne County as the CAO for many decades. It's really been, we're really privileged and honored to have him over in Calaveras.
He's a likable man.
Yes, he is. And he has been working with the board, and one of the changes while he's been here, and it actually started with our governance workshops, which you were there for all of them, is what are our expectations, not internally as a governing body for that role. And through that process, through many days in those workshops, the board adopted a CEO model of administration for Calaveras County. So what's the difference between a CAO and a CEO? CEO has, the easiest way is they have direct hire and fire authority.
Okay.
They have more personnel oversight. Under a CAO model, tongue twister here, it is appointed by the Board of Supervisors. Which then it can be confusing of who's in charge, what are the priorities, how do you manage the expectation of a board versus, what constituents may need, and with the CEO model, it gives more clear who's in what lane, and where the expectations are coming from, and who is giving the personnel oversight of management.
On the CEO model, if someone disagrees with the CEO, can they appeal to the Board of Supervisors?
It's not the same as a CAO. A CAO model they could, but under a CEO, there's a lot more HR. It's more of an HR process rather than going directly to the Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
Obviously, if there's issues that the board needs to realize that, our policies aren't in line with philosophies of how we are, how county business is being conducted. Obviously, the board needs to be aware, but in a CEO model, there's more of an HR. There's always an HR process, but you go through different layers through that model. Whereas the CAO, it would have been directly to the board because we appointed that individual.
Right. Well, you also appointed the CEO, true?
We have not appointed a new CEO.
Not yet,
No, yes, but we started the recruitment process and we opened the job announcement, so hopefully I don't know, maybe I'm being a dreamer, but I'm hoping by the end of February, but we'll see what the end of March brings.
How many applicants do you have so far?
I do not know that.
Okay.
But I am fairly confident that we're going to get very qualified and competent individuals applying that will be great for Calaveras County and the board.
Craig Pedro is a very intelligent person.
Yeah.
It's
yes.
good to have you on your side.
Yes. Very.
Okay, so we'll have some changes. We're not sure yet, but it might be within a month, huh?
Yes. Yep.
Okay, the next item is emergency activity, fire, storm, SBA loans. So we have a number of ongoing emergencies, and I think they have to be declared in order to get funding. I'm not sure.
Correct.
Is that how that works?
So let's tackle storm since that's right now in this very moment. So storm or really any emergency has to be declared by the local jurisdiction. So the Board of Supervisors had an emergency meeting right after the new year specifically for this to declare an emergency with all of the storms that we've had over the last, since December 31st, give or take, New Year's Eve. And what that does is then that allows us to qualify for Cal OES funding And then just recently, as of today, Calaveras County also was put on the list for SBA support through FEMA. So what does that mean? That means that local businesses, local homeowners, property owners that were impacted can apply for these funds through the SBA to support what they've lost or damages or what have you to their property and or to their business. And that's a big feat because for the last week it was Sacramento County, Santa Cruz County. There was state funding, but there's only so much the state can support, and we need those additional support from the federal government to help our constituents and businesses in this time. And then for fire, there's been a lot of progress locally at the local level of, I think the biggest question is what is government doing to help with fire prevention? And so the Board of Supervisors has entered into a Good Neighbors Agreement with the Forest Service, which allows a different type of process for private companies to go in and do preventative fire breaks and other wildfire mitigations. We also have a resource conservation district. I don't know how many people know about that. And they have been receiving a lot of grants as well to do certain projects in the county for fire mitigation. And then there's also been other agencies such as Utica Water and Power, as an example. They received a CAL FIRE grant to do wildfire prevention around their infrastructure. And that up the Highway 4 corridor, which is crucial because, as we all know, what happened during the Derby fire, that'll allow them to put additional protection on the flumes that carry the water down to the residents of Murphy's and Angels Camp. So those are just some examples, and it's not just on the reliance of county. We're passing these policies in order to open up various creative ways to allow fire mitigation in the county.
One of the things that I was concerned is on wildfires, there's almost no quick response. In other words, it has to be, it's almost planned that it's going to cover a lot of acreage and it can't be put out quickly. But in some places, they have aircraft with fire retardant in the air at those times of the year and in those areas where they're most prone that can get to it within a minute, stopping it. And I'm wondering, that's expensive. I understand it costs $250,000 per day to have one of these big tankers in the air. But look at the billions of dollars of loss that'd be saved. So if you spend $1 million to save $1 billion, that kind of makes sense,
That's something I think at a higher level more than our governing body can address.
Well, it's a state problem.
Yeah, it's the state of California, And, when there's limited resources and you have up and down the state, plus Nevada and all the other western states, they just the resources are competing and trying to get from one to another. But that's definitely a state legislation move that they need to find a solution on that and invest more in those type of resources.
Yeah, instant response. It seemed like maybe some counties that come together, like CSAC or maybe RCRC, can see the logic of this and then communicate with the state representatives to try to get the ball rolling.
And there is a lot of collaboration at the RCRC and the CSAC. There's a National Resource Committee, and they are actively working with not only our state partners, our federal partners, and all of trying to find how do we find alternative solutions to cut the red tape. And I know there's been some of that in the governor's budget, some of that such as streamlining some of the CEQA, because those things that we see those resources, but what we don't see is all of the amount of check boxes they have to do. And
Right.
some of that is CEQA, and what can we do to streamline some of these processes for those resources to get where they need to be.
Boy, the
But they need that, yeah.
taxpayers really agree with you on that one.
Yeah, and
Cut the red
that's
tape.
where we rely on these groups, OCOC, CSAC, you know, because that's where those voices, when you come together as a unit and you have all these counties saying the same thing, that's when you're gonna see results. And that's why we participate in this conversation.
Okay, that moves into the strategic plan. So we have a strategic plan now,
Yes,
and governor's involved with that a little bit.
yes. I'm really excited about it. It was one of the things that I really wanted to tackle when I got elected 2 years ago, and to see this actually come to fruition and seeing this next year of implementation, I'm really excited to be a part of this. But more importantly, just the work that has been done over the last 2 years of staff. You know, the Board of Supervisors never would have been able to get this accomplished without staff. So staff really was the foundation of getting this plan and bringing it to the Board of Supervisors. We had many workshops separately together, working out all these ideas and finding where we can find common top priorities, solutions, and where do we go. And what the Board of Supervisors adopted in December was a strategic plan for 3 years. So from now until 2020.
Is that on the website yet?
Yes, it is on the website, so you can go onto the website to find it. I cannot think of all the left-hand links to click, but it is
I just go to county government.
Yeah, you go to county government, and I believe it's under administration, and somewhere on the top button there's a strategic plan. Yes, it's really exciting, you know, and public safety, natural resources, like we just talked about.
Yeah.
You know, how do we continue to provide the level of services that our constituents want, but also supporting our staff to ensure that those services are being provided. And it gives a roadmap. I mean, it ties back into the budget.
Right.
You know, we have a list of priorities, we're tracking the budget at the same time, and that those two things going in parallel will be able to catapult the county into making good decisions.
We covered the county pretty good, Amanda.
Yeah,
Thank you for
thank
being
you.
our guest, and thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert.